EIGRP over the top, or EIGRP OTP. In this video, I'm going to talk about EIGRP OTP. EIGRP OTP is a useful feature about EIGRP. You can use EIGRP OTP for neighborship, for EIGRP neighborship between remote routers. Let me to talk about the EIGRP OTP. You know that if you want to configure EIGRP, normally we should configure EIGRP between two directly connected routers. For example, between R1 and R2, I'm using the EIGRP neighborship commands, enabling EIGRP on the interface of R1 and also EIGRP on the interface of, for example, R2. And after that, we should have neighborship. This is the connected neighborship, okay? This is normal condition about EIGRP. But in some cases, we need the neighborship between EIGRP neighborship between remote routers. For example, you have R1 connected to a service provider router, for example, R2, and after that we have R3. R1 is a router in our site. For example, this is the edge router of site 1, and also R3 is the edge router of the site 2, for example. And R2 is our service provider, okay, or carrier. This is the service provider. We need to configure EIGRP neighborship between router R1 and R2 without neighborship with the router R2. Provider's task is to connect R1 and R2, and this means that R1 can send traffic to R3. This means that, for example, you can use ping command in the R1 to ping R3 to send ICMP echo request, for example, to the R3. But we can't configure neighborship normally, EIGRP neighborship between R1 and R3. For example, if you configure EIGRP on the interface of R1 and EIGRP on the interface of R3 because of existing of R2, the EIGRP neighborship will not establish. You know it. Yes, we can configure some advanced features, for example, VPLS or VPWs or some other features to have neighborship between remote routers in, for example, in this scenario. But I don't want to hassle and I don't want to use advanced features. EIGRP on the top is an easy feature that you can use it to configure, for example, neighborship between EIGRP, between R1 and R3. EIGRP OTP has many advantage for us because we can configure EIGRP neighborship between remote routers, and after that, for example, we don't need to contribute with SP, with service provider, to exchanging routes. We can directly send updates from R1 to R3, and this is so useful. And the configuration of the EIGRP OTP is so easy. Because of that, EIGRP OTP is a useful feature for connecting for neighborship between remote routers. The only things that you need is that R1 can send traffic to R3. For example, can I send ICMP echo request to R3. If you have connectivity between R1 and R3, okay, you can use EIGRP OTP. EIGRP OTP can give us this opportunity to have neighborship between EIGRP neighborship between remote routers. That's it. Okay. After that, we should understand how EIGRP OTP can work. EIGRP OTP is an overlay VPN, such as, for example, GRE, such as, for example, IPsec. Okay, IPsec VPN. This is an overlay VPN. This means that we have one underlay. The underlay is R1, R2, R3. This is the underlay. This is the physical network. R1, R2, and R3. This is the underlay, okay? We can use EIGRP OTP to have this network R1 directly connected to R3 about EIGRP. This is the overlay, okay? This laid on the underlay, okay? We can use EIGRP on the top or EIGRP OTP to have an overlay network only for EIGRP. EIGRP overlay uses the Lisp technology. Lisp technology is a locator identifier separation protocol. What is the Lisp? Lisp is a technology that we can use it to, for example, separate the locator and the identity. Okay. For learning about the EIGRP over the top, it's not important. It's not needed to learn Lisp because EIGRP on the top only use Lisp in some cases. Lisp is a big story. If you want to learn Lisp completely, and this is so useful for you, you can watch my Lisp video. But for now, EIGRP only Lisp as only use Lisp for the data plane, okay? And it's not needed to learn about the Lisp because EIGRP in some cases uses the Lisp for EIGRP OTP. But Lisp is a useful technology that you should learn it, and you should learn the Lisp in my video about Lisp. Here, only you should know that EIGRP OTP is an overlay VPN. First. The second is EIGRP OTP uses Lisp, locator identifier separation protocol. And after that, EIGRP OTP uses Lisp for only the data plane. Let me talk about it a little. Lisp is a technology, we can use it for control plane, okay, and also data plane, okay, data plane. For example, in SD access, we are using Lisp for control plane. And in the Lisp network, we are using Lisp for control plane and data plane. But in EIGRP OTP, we are using Lisp only about the data plane. This means that we are using Lisp only to encapsulating traffic, okay, on the underlay and sending it over in overlay. Okay, it's so easy. Don't worry about the detail of the Lisp because here is not a class of Lisp. Okay, here is a class of EIGRP. If you want to learn about the Lisp, you should understand the detail of the Lisp in the Lisp course. Very good. After that, in the EIGRP OTP, we are using for data plane. This means that we are using the Lisp for encapsulating the data. And after that, we are using EIGRP for control plane. EIGRP for the control plane, Lisp for the data plane. This means that we are using Lisp for encapsulating the data, and we are using EIGRP for sending the routing update, for example. Okay. And after that, if you want to configure EIGRP OTP, you should use only EIGRP named mode. You know that in EIGRP we can configure EIGRP in traditional mode, router EIGRP AS number, and also we can configure EIGRP named mode, the most advanced mode of EIGRP, router EIGRP, for example, virtual name. Okay, if you want to use this advanced feature EIGRP OTP, you should use EIGRP named mode. Here I'm going to show you how you can configure the EIGRP over the top. This useful feature can be configured easily. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can configure EIGRP OTP in full mesh mode. Okay. In the second video, in the next video, I'm going to show you EIGRP OTP configuration with route reflector, with EIGRP route reflector, not BGP route reflector. It's a new term, EIGRP route reflector. But for this scenario, I'm going to configure EIGRP OTP in full mesh mode. Okay, it's so easy. The configuration of EIGRP OTP is so easy. Let me talk about this scenario. This is our scenario. In this scenario is designed easy as an easy scenario and as a simple scenario, because I don't want